A wealthy CEO disguises himself as a homeless man to test humanity on the streets of New York. Nobody stops to help, until a 7-year-old girl living on the streets offers him her last dollar, the only money she had to buy food. What he discovers next will shatter everything he thought he knew about his own past. Could this little girl hold the key to a secret that's been buried for years? Watch until the end. You won't believe what happens when the truth finally comes out. If this story touches your heart, please hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support means everything. The November rain hit the cracked pavement of Washington Square Park like tiny bullets, each drop echoing the hollow rhythm of a city that never stopped moving. Marcus Hawthorne pulled the tattered wool blanket tighter around his shoulders, the designer stubble on his 39-year-old face now accompanied by strategically applied dirt from his makeup team. The hidden cameras positioned in 3 different locations captured every angle. This was day 3 of his social experiment, and so far humanity had failed spectacularly. Another 100 people just walked past. His assistant Jennifer's voice crackled through the nearly invisible earpiece. The footage is depressing, Marcus. Maybe we should call it. Marcus adjusted his position against the cold stone wall, his tin cup containing exactly 3 quarters and a penny, props from the production team. The irony wasn't lost on him. As CEO of Hawthorne Industries, he had $17 billion in assets, a penthouse overlooking Central Park, and influence that reached into every corner of American business. Yet here he sat, invisible to the very people whose products he helped create, whose jobs his companies provided, whose lives intersected with his empire in 1,000 invisible ways. Not yet, he whispered into the hidden microphone embedded in his collar. Give it until sundown. A businessman in a $3,000 suit stepped over his outstretched legs without breaking stride, phone pressed to his ear, laughing about quarterly profits. A young couple walked past holding designer coffee cups, the woman's handbag worth more than most people earned in a month. They didn't even glance down. 3 college students passed by, absorbed in their phones, their thumbs scrolling through lives more interesting than the one deteriorating in front of them. Marcus had started this experiment with a hypothesis, that wealth had created an invisible wall between classes, that people no longer saw the humanity in those who had fallen. 3 days of sitting in various locations throughout Manhattan had proven him devastatingly correct. Over 400 people had passed him. 17 had made eye contact. 5 had dropped change without stopping. 0 had asked his name or if he needed help. The rain intensified, and Marcus watched the park empty like water draining from a sink. His camera crew, disguised as street vendors and tourists, maintained their positions. The light was fading fast now, painting the wet pavement in shades of gray and amber. He was about to call it when he heard the voice. "Mister, are you cold?" Marcus looked up into the face of an angel. Or at least that's what his shocked brain registered in the first moment. The little girl couldn't have been more than 7 years old, with blonde hair that hung in tangled waves past her shoulders, matted from what looked like days without proper washing. Her face was smudged with dirt, but her eyes, crystal blue and impossibly bright, held a concern that no one else had shown. She wore a pink jacket that had once been pretty but was now stained and torn at the sleeve. Over a dress that had been washed so many times the original color was just a memory. "I'm okay, sweetheart," Marcus said softly, his throat unexpectedly tight. "You should get out of this rain." The girl tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that seemed far too old for her young face. Behind her, barely visible in the growing darkness, Marcus could make out a woman huddled under the arch of the park entrance. Thin, wrapped in what looked like every piece of clothing she owned, watching them with hollow eyes. "That's my mama," the girl said, following his gaze. "She's sick, really sick. But today I made $1. She held up a crumpled bill with the pride of someone displaying a trophy. "I was singing near the subway and a nice lady gave it to me. Mama said we could get some soup, maybe some bread if it's on sale." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. This child who had nothing was stopping to check on him. This child who probably hadn't eaten properly in days was concerned about whether he was cold. "That's wonderful, honey," he managed. "You should go get that soup. Your mama needs you." The girl looked down at the dollar in her small hand, then at his empty cup. Her face scrunched up in thought, and Marcus could almost see the gears turning in her head. Then, in a movement that would later be replayed millions of times across social media, in boardrooms, and in Marcus's memory during every quiet moment for the rest of his life, she bent down and placed the dollar in his cup. "You need it more," she said simply. "You don't have a mama to take care of you." Marcus couldn't speak, literally couldn't form words. The little girl smiled at him, a smile that somehow contained more light than the entire darkening sky, and turned to walk back to her mother. "Wait," Marcus finally choked out, his hand shooting out to stop her, decades of executive composure completely shattered. "Wait, please. What's your name?" The girl turned back, rain dripping down her face like tears, though she was smiling. "My name is Lily. What's yours?" "Marcus," he said, forgetting the false name he'd been using. "Lily, I can't take your dollar, please." But Lily shook her head with the stubborn certainty that only children possess. "Mama says when you have something, even something small, you should share it with people who have less." "You look very sad, Mr. Marcus. Maybe the dollar will help you be less sad." She ran back to her mother before he could respond, and Marcus watched as the woman, who looked far too young to have a 7-year-old, perhaps early 30s, pulled Lily close. They disappeared into the rainy darkness of the park, two shadows among thousands in a city that seemed designed to swallow people whole. Marcus sat frozen, staring at the dollar in his cup. His hand trembled as he picked it up, this piece of paper that represented everything this child had earned, everything standing between her and hunger. And she'd given it to a stranger because she thought he needed it more. "Did you get that?" He whispered into his microphone, his voice breaking. "Jennifer, tell me you got that." "Every second," Jennifer replied, and he could hear she was crying. "Marcus, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've never seen anything like that. Who is that child?" "Find out," Marcus said, standing up, the blanket falling away to reveal the expensive thermal gear he'd worn underneath. "Find out everything. Where they're sleeping, what their story is, everything. And Jennifer, get the car. We're done with the experiment. We have work to do." Marcus pulled off the artificial dirt, his mind already racing through possibilities, resources, solutions. He'd designed this experiment to expose the worst in humanity, to create a viral moment that would shame people into compassion. Instead, a 7-year-old girl living on the streets had taught him something he'd somehow forgotten in his climb to the top: that true wealth had nothing to do with money. The rain continued to fall, but Marcus no longer felt cold. He felt something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose that went beyond quarterly reports and shareholder value. Lily had given him her last dollar, and he was going to change her world. He just didn't know yet that in doing so, he was about to uncover a truth that would change his own world forever. As he walked toward his waiting vehicle, Marcus looked back one last time at where Lily and her mother had disappeared. Somewhere in this massive city, that little girl was probably going to bed hungry tonight, having given away the only thing standing between her and a meal. The thought made his jaw clench with determination. He had no idea that Lily wasn't just a random homeless child. He had no idea that her mother was hiding a secret that connected them in ways he couldn't imagine. And he definitely had no idea that the simple act of accepting that dollar would unravel a mystery 7 years in the making. A mystery that would force him to confront his past, his choices, and the very foundation of who he thought he was. The Hawthorne Industries building rose like a glass and steel monument to success in the heart of Manhattan's financial district. At 6 the following morning, Marcus sat in his corner office on the 47th floor, surrounded by screens that monitored global markets, but his eyes were fixed on a different kind of data. Jennifer had worked through the night, and the folder on his desk contained a story that made his chest ache with every sentence. "Lily Brennan," he read aloud, the name feeling significant in a way he couldn't explain. "Age 7, born April 15th. Mother, Catherine Brennan, age 32. Last known address." He stopped, his jaw tightening. They were evicted 8 months ago. Jennifer, 8 months? This child has been on the streets for 8 months? Jennifer nodded from her position by the window, dark circles under her eyes speaking to the sleepless night. "It gets worse." Catherine Brennan worked as a nurse at Mercy General Hospital. Single mother, perfect employment record, but she developed a heart condition, dilated cardiomyopathy. She couldn't work, lost her job, lost her health insurance. Medical bills piled up. They lost everything. Marcus flipped through the papers, each page a hammer blow to his conscience. Eviction notices. Medical bills with amounts that would have been pocket change to him, but were insurmountable mountains to them. A report from Child Protective Services that had been filed but never followed up on due to system overload. Photos of Lily from better times. Birthday parties, first days of school. Moments of normal childhood that now seemed like artifacts from another world. "There's more," Jennifer said quietly. "Catherine Brennan is dying, Marcus. Her heart is failing. She needs a transplant, but without insurance, without an address, she's not even on the list. The free clinic doctors give her maybe 6 months. Lily doesn't know. Catherine told her it's just a bad cold that will get better." Marcus's hand clenched around the papers, crinkling them. "A 7-year-old girl is watching her mother die on the streets, and she gave me her last dollar because she thought I looked sad." "What kind of world?" He stopped, pressing his palms against his eyes. "Where are they now? Right now? This second?" "They usually sleep in the subway station at Union Square," Jennifer said, pulling up a map on her tablet. "There's a warm grate there. Catherine has a spot she considers safe. And I've already dispatched our security team to locate them, but Marcus..." She hesitated. "This is complicated. You can't just swoop in and throw money at this. The legal implications, the optics, Child Protective Services could get involved in ways that might actually make things worse." "Then we do it right," Marcus said, standing up and moving to the window. The city spread out before him, millions of people starting their day, millions of stories intersecting and diverging. "Get David Chen from legal up here, and call Dr. Sarah Morrison at Columbia Presbyterian. She owes me a favor from when we funded their cardiac wing. If Catherine Brennan needs a heart transplant, we're going to make sure she gets one." "Marcus, the waiting list..." "I don't care about the list," Marcus interrupted, then caught himself. "No, that's not right. I do care. Which is why we're going to fund 10 transplants, not 1. We'll create a program through the hospital for people who fall through the cracks. But Catherine Brennan is getting on that list today, and she's getting the care she needs. Make it happen." Jennifer made notes on her tablet, but her expression was troubled. "What about Lily? We can't just take her off the streets without proper channels. If we're not careful, this could look like..." "I know what it could look like," Marcus said sharply, then softened his tone. "I'm sorry. You're right. We need to do this properly. Get in touch with the best family services attorney in the city. I want to understand every legal pathway. In the meantime, we can provide immediate assistance, housing, food, medical care for Catherine, all through proper channels. Set up an emergency fund that Catherine can access. Frame it as a grant from the Hawthorne Foundation for Displaced Medical Workers. It's not charity if she earned it through her years of service." Over the next 3 hours, Marcus's office transformed into a war room dedicated to changing 2 lives. David Chen arrived with his team of attorneys, mapping out legal strategies. Dr. Morrison conference called in, initially skeptical, but ultimately moved by Catherine's case file. Marcus committed $5 million to the hospital's transplant program on the spot, with one condition. Catherine Brennan would be evaluated immediately. By noon, the plan was in motion. A social worker named Patricia Gomez, who came highly recommended and had a reputation for genuine compassion, was dispatched to Union Square. She would approach Catherine and Lily with an offer of temporary housing, a furnished apartment in a modest but safe building in Queens, paid for by a grant program for displaced healthcare workers. Medical care would be provided through the hospital's charity program, which had suddenly received a massive anonymous donation. Marcus watched it all unfold from his office, feeling simultaneously powerful and helpless. He could move millions with a phone call, could make medical miracles happen with his checkbook, but he couldn't be there. He couldn't be the one to see the look on Lily's face when she realized she'd have a real bed tonight. Some part of him desperately wanted to be there for that moment. "They've made contact," Jennifer said, holding up her phone. "Patricia found them at the Union Square station, She's talking to Catherine now. Marcus moved to stand beside her, reading the text updates as they came through. Catherine was suspicious at first, then cautious. Then, when Patricia mentioned the medical care, desperate hope began to show through. It took 40 minutes of careful conversation, but finally the text came through that made Marcus release a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. They're accepting, en route to temporary housing now. Good, Marcus said. That's good. Make sure they have everything they need. Food, clothes for Lily, anything. Already arranged, Jennifer assured him. The apartment is fully stocked. Patricia will help them get settled and start the paperwork for Catherine's medical evaluation tomorrow. Marcus nodded, but something felt unfinished. He moved back to his desk and picked up the folder again, studying the photo of Lily from happier times. 7 years old, the report said, born April 15th. Something about that date nagged at him, but he couldn't place why. Jennifer, do we have the father's information? Is he in the picture? Jennifer shook her head. Birth certificate lists the father as unknown. Catherine has never mentioned him to anyone according to our research. It's just been her and Lily since the beginning. Marcus set the photo down, a strange discomfort settling in his stomach. 7 years ago, he murmured. Where was I 7 years ago? Early spring? Jennifer pulled up his old calendar. Let me see. April of that year you were doing the European expansion tour. You were in London for most of March and April, then back here for... She paused, her eyes widening slightly. Marcus, you took that personal week off, the one where you refused all calls. Your calendar just says personal time blocked out. Marcus felt his heart rate increase for no reason he could name. Pull up everything from that week. Where I was, what I was doing, everything. Marcus, that was 7 years ago. What does this have to... Just do it, he said, more sharply than he intended. Please. As Jennifer worked, Marcus stood at the window again, that nagging feeling growing stronger. 7 years ago. A personal week. He'd been different then, 32 years old, younger, more reckless. He'd just finalized a massive deal, celebrated harder than usual. There'd been a party at his Hamptons house, lots of people, lots of drinks. The details were frustratingly fuzzy. Marcus, Jennifer said slowly, her voice strange. There are photos from that week, from a party at your Hampton house. There's a woman in several of them standing next to you. The metadata says the photos are from April 14th, 7 years ago. She turned her tablet to show him, and Marcus felt the floor tilt beneath him. The woman in the photo was younger, happier, her blonde hair catching the sunlight, her smile bright and genuine. She was beautiful, and she was looking at the camera while his younger self looked at her with an expression that made his current self uncomfortable to witness. The woman in the photo was Catherine Brennan. No, Marcus whispered. But even as he said it, fragments of memory began clicking into place. A chance meeting at a hospital fundraiser. A conversation that lasted hours. An invitation to the party. A connection that felt different from anything he'd experienced. A morning after where she'd left before he woke up, leaving only a note that said she couldn't be part of his world. He'd tried to find her, but she'd given him a wrong number, vanished completely. Eventually, he'd convinced himself it didn't matter, that it was just another night, nothing special. Count the months, Jennifer said quietly. April 14th to April 15th the following year. 9 months, 1 day. Marcus sat down heavily, his mind racing through implications. It's not possible, she would have told me. She would have... But even as he said it, he remembered the note. His world wasn't for her. His world of wealth and power and public scrutiny. What if she'd found out she was pregnant and decided she didn't want to bring a child into that world? What if she'd tried to make it on her own, succeeded for years, and then... Get Dr. Morrison on the phone, Marcus said, his voice hollow. Tell her I need a paternity test done, discreetly, as part of Lily's standard medical intake tomorrow. Genetic screening, family history markers, everything that would justify a comprehensive DNA panel. Catherine will sign general medical consent forms. We need my profile compared to Lily's. Marcus, are you sure you want to... I need to know. He cut her off. If there's even a chance that I've had a daughter living on the streets, that I've had a child I didn't know about, I need to know. And Jennifer? He looked at her, his eyes hard. No one talks about this. Not until we know for certain. That little girl's been through enough without adding this complication to her life. Jennifer nodded slowly. What if the test is positive? What does that mean? Marcus looked back at the photo of Lily, at those blue eyes that suddenly seemed familiar in a way that made his chest ache. Then everything changes, he said quietly. For all of us. The temporary apartment in Queens was a miracle in Lily's eyes. She'd spent the first hour just touching things. The soft couch, the clean walls, the kitchen faucet that produced hot water without rust. Catherine watched her daughter explore their new space with tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the sudden reversal of fortune that felt too good to be true. "Mama, look," Lily called from the bedroom. "There's a bed. A real bed with a pink blanket. Is this really ours?" Catherine nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Patricia Gomez, the social worker, smiled gently as she set down bags of groceries on the kitchen counter. "It's yours for now," Patricia said. "The grant covers 6 months of housing while we get you back on your feet. Tomorrow we'll get Lily enrolled in school, and Catherine, you have an appointment at Columbia Presbyterian for a full cardiac evaluation." "I don't understand," Catherine whispered, sitting down on the couch before her shaking legs gave out. "I've been applying for assistance for months. Every program has a waiting list. Every door has been closed. Why now? What changed?" Patricia chose her words carefully, following the script Marcus's team had prepared. The Hawthorne Foundation recently created a new program specifically for healthcare workers who've fallen through the cracks of the system. Your case file came across the right desk at the right time. Sometimes, Catherine, people just get lucky. Lucky, Catherine thought, watching Lily dance around the apartment with pure joy. They'd been living on the streets for 8 months, slowly dying together in public while the city stepped over them. She'd tried everything. Every shelter had been full. Every assistance program had impossible waiting lists. Every church charity had already exhausted their resources. She'd even attempted to create an online fundraiser at the public library, but without a permanent address or bank account, the platform had rejected her application. Pride had kept her from begging family members she'd lost touch with years ago, and shame had paralyzed her from reaching out to former colleagues who'd moved on with their lives. Now suddenly they had housing, food, medical care. It felt less like luck and more like a fairy tale, and Catherine had stopped believing in those years ago. After Patricia left with promises to return in the morning, Catherine ran a bath for Lily, the first real bath in months. She sat on the bathroom floor watching her daughter play with bubbles, marveling at simple soap and warm water, and Catherine felt her heart break and heal simultaneously. This was what childhood should look like. Not sleeping on subway grates, not going to bed hungry, not watching your mother slowly fade away. "Mama, can we really stay here?" Lily asked, her voice small and uncertain, as if speaking too loudly might make the dream evaporate. "What if they change their minds?" "We can stay, baby," Catherine assured her, though the same fear gnawed at her. 6 months at least. That's enough time for Mama to get better and find work again. Lily's face brightened, then grew thoughtful. "What about the man in the park? Do you think he'll use the dollar to get food?" Catherine's breath caught. She'd watched from the shadows as Lily had given away their only money to a stranger. Part of her had wanted to stop it, to protect what little they had. But another part, the part that remembered who she used to be before desperation wore her down, had been proud. In the midst of their suffering, her daughter had retained her humanity, her compassion. That was worth more than any dollar. "I'm sure he will, sweetheart," Catherine said softly. "That was a very kind thing you did. He looked so sad, Mama. Sadder than us even. At least I have you." Lily splashed the water thoughtfully. "Do you think he has anyone?" Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. How did she raise such a pure soul? In a world that had shown them nothing but cruelty these past months, Lily still had empathy for strangers. "I don't know, baby. But I bet your kindness made his day better." That night, after Lily fell asleep in the real bed she'd been so excited about, Catherine stood at the window looking out at the Queens neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe. It was warm. It was more than they'd had in so long. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the irregular flutter of her failing heart. The doctors at the free clinic had been blunt. Without treatment, she had months at best. But she'd made peace with that. Her only prayer had been that Lily would somehow survive her, would somehow find a better life. Now, maybe that prayer was being answered. But Catherine couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this grant program than Patricia was saying. The timing was too perfect, the resources too generous. Someone was behind this, someone with significant means. But who? And why? Her mind drifted, as it often did in quiet moments, to Marcus. She hadn't let herself think his full name in years, had trained herself to push away memories of that night 7 years ago. It had been the most magical and terrifying night of her life. She'd met him at a hospital fundraiser she'd attended as part of her job, never expecting the CEO of Hawthorne Industries to notice her, let alone spend the entire evening talking to her like she was the only person in the room. The memory came back with painful clarity. She'd been assigned to work the event, helping coordinate with the catering staff, making sure the medical displays were properly arranged. She'd worn her best dress, a simple blue number that had cost her 2 weeks of careful saving, and had felt completely out of place among the designer gowns and expensive jewelry. Marcus had approached her near the cardiac display, asking intelligent questions about heart disease statistics. She'd been surprised that he actually listened to her answers, that he seemed genuinely interested rather than just making small talk. They'd talked for 20 minutes, then an hour, then somehow the entire evening had passed and they were the last ones in the gallery. "I'm having a small gathering at my place in the Hamptons this weekend," he'd said, and she'd seen something vulnerable in his eyes despite his confidence. "Would you like to come?" "I'd love to continue our conversation." She should have said no. She should have recognized the chasm between their worlds and protected herself. But there was something about him that night, a loneliness that mirrored her own, a hunger for genuine connection that wealth couldn't satisfy. So she'd said yes. The party hadn't been small. There had been dozens of people, all moving in circles of wealth and influence that made her dizzy. She'd almost left within the first hour, feeling like an imposter in someone else's life. But then Marcus had found her on the beach, standing alone watching the waves, and he'd sat down beside her in his expensive suit without caring about the sand. "I hate these parties," he'd confessed. "Everyone wants something, a deal, an introduction, a piece of whatever success they think I represent. You're the first person in months who's talked to me like I'm just a person." They'd talked until dawn. About their childhoods. His privileged but emotionally distant. Hers poor but filled with love until her parents died. About dreams and fears and the strange isolation that came from never quite fitting into the world around you. And somewhere in those hours, as the sun rose over the Atlantic, they'd kissed, and it had felt like the most natural thing in the world. Catherine shook her head, pressing her forehead against the cool window glass. She didn't regret that night, couldn't regret it because it had given her Lily, but she'd known even then that it couldn't last. When she'd woken up in his bed the next morning, reality had crashed back in. His phone had been buzzing with calls from boards of directors, from government officials, from people whose names she recognized from news headlines. She'd seen his world displayed in that bedroom, awards from presidents, photos with world leaders, evidence of a life so impossibly far from hers that the night before seemed like a beautiful dream that couldn't survive daylight. On his nightstand had been a folder with the header, Hawthorne Global Expansion Initiative Confidential. Even his bedtime reading involved reshaping international markets. So she'd left. She'd written a note saying she didn't belong in his world, and she'd disappeared, changing her number, making sure he couldn't find her. She'd convinced herself it was better for both of them. He could continue building his empire, and she could return to her normal life without the complication of trying to bridge an unbridgeable gap. And then, 2 weeks later, she'd found out she was pregnant. The decision to never tell him had been agonizing, but in her mind necessary. How could she bring a child into his world of constant scrutiny and impossible expectations? How could she ask him to choose between his empire and a baby with a woman he'd spent one night with? More importantly, how could she risk him taking Lily away, raising her in that cold world of wealth where people were valued for what they could contribute to the bottom line, rather than who they were? So she'd stayed silent. She'd had Lily alone, built a life for just the two of them, and it had been a good life for a while. She'd been a good mother, provided for her daughter, gave her love and stability, and taught her that kindness mattered more than money. Until her heart started failing, until the medical bills mounted, until everything collapsed like a house of cards in a strong wind. Catherine wiped away tears she hadn't realized were falling. Standing in this apartment that felt like a gift from the universe, she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. If things had been different, if she'd told Marcus the truth 7 years ago, would Lily have ever had to sleep on the streets? Would her daughter have ever known what it felt like to go to bed hungry, to wake up cold and scared, to watch other children go to school while she had nowhere to go? The guilt was overwhelming. She'd made a choice based on pride and fear, and her daughter had paid the price. Yes, Marcus's world had seemed cold and impossible. Yes, she'd been terrified of losing Lily to a man who could afford armies of lawyers. But maybe, she'd been wrong. Maybe Marcus would have stepped up. Maybe he would have found a way to be a father while still being a CEO. Maybe Lily would have had everything she needed instead of learning too young what it meant to have nothing. Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Reminder, medical appointment tomorrow at 9 a.m. Dr. Sarah Morrison will be doing your evaluation personally. She's the head of cardiac surgery at Columbia Presbyterian. You're in excellent hands. Catherine stared at the text, her earlier suspicions returning with force. The head of cardiac surgery? For someone on a charity program? That didn't make sense. Dr. Morrison was world-renowned, operated on celebrities and politicians, had a waiting list months long. Why would she personally evaluate a homeless woman? Unless someone had specifically requested it, unless someone with significant influence had made a phone call, no. She was being paranoid. This was just how well-funded programs worked when they actually had resources. The Hawthorne Foundation was massive, touched every major institution in New York. It was just coincidence that they'd chosen this moment to help her. Just coincidence that the program had started right when she needed it most. Just coincidence that the name Hawthorne kept appearing in connection with her sudden good fortune. Coincidence. That's all it was. It had to be. But as Catherine climbed into bed beside her sleeping daughter, she couldn't shake the feeling that her past was about to collide with her present in ways she couldn't anticipate. Somewhere in this city, someone was pulling strings, and deep in her gut, she knew who that someone might be. The question was, had Marcus somehow found them? Did he know about Lily? And if he did, what would he do with that information? She watched Lily sleep so peaceful and innocent, one small hand curled under her chin. This child was her entire world, the only good thing she'd ever created, the only part of her life she'd never regret. Whatever happened next, whatever forces were moving in the background, Catherine would protect her daughter, even from a father who might have the power to take her away. Meanwhile, across the city in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Marcus sat in darkness nursing a glass of scotch he hadn't touched. The paternity test wouldn't be completed for another 48 hours, but in his gut, he already knew the answer. He'd spent the evening going through every memory of that night 7 years ago, and the pieces fit together with devastating clarity. Catherine had disappeared because she was pregnant. She'd chosen to raise their child alone, rather than tell him. For 7 years, he'd had a daughter he didn't know about. And for 8 months, that daughter had been homeless, sleeping on streets while he'd lived in luxury, completely unaware that his own child was suffering. The anger he felt wasn't directed at Catherine. Not really. How could he blame her for protecting her child from a world that must have seemed threatening and overwhelming? He'd seen himself that night, drunk on success and power, surrounded by people who valued him only for what he could give them. What woman would want to raise a child in that environment? No. The anger was directed at himself. He'd let her slip away without fighting to find her. He'd been so consumed with building his empire that he hadn't questioned why she'd left so abruptly, hadn't pushed harder to track her down. And even if she'd never planned to tell him, he should have tried harder. He should have done something differently. More than that, He was angry at the system that had failed them. Catherine had been a nurse, a healthcare worker who'd spent her career helping others. When she'd gotten sick, the very system she'd served had abandoned her. She'd lost her job, her insurance, her home, and no one had cared. How many others were out there right now, falling through the same cracks? His phone buzzed with an update from Jennifer. Patricia reports that Catherine and Lily are settled in the apartment. Medical evaluation confirmed for tomorrow morning. DNA samples will be collected as part of standard genetic screening panel. Catherine seems suspicious but accepting help. No mention of you or any connection to Hawthorne Industries beyond the foundation name. Marcus set down his phone and moved to the window. The city stretched out before him, millions of lights representing millions of lives, each one with its own struggles and stories. Somewhere out there in Queens, Lily was sleeping in a real bed for the first time in months, probably dreaming dreams that he hoped were better than the reality she'd been living. He pressed his hand against the cold glass, making a silent promise to a daughter he couldn't yet acknowledge. Whatever it took, however long it took, he would make this right. He would be the father she deserved if she'd let him. He would give her the world she should have had from the beginning, and he would somehow find a way to forgive himself for not being there when she needed him most. But first, he had to wait for the DNA test. He had to know for certain before he could take any action. The resemblance was there, those blue eyes, that blonde hair, even some of his facial features visible in her young face. But he needed scientific proof. He needed to know beyond any doubt that Lily was his daughter. The wait would be torture. 48 hours of wondering, of imagining what he'd say to Catherine, of planning how to approach Lily without traumatizing her further. She'd been through enough without adding the shock of suddenly having a father who was also a billionaire. That kind of revelation required careful handling, proper preparation, professional guidance. Marcus had faced billion-dollar negotiations, had navigated corporate battles that made headlines, had built an empire from nothing. But nothing in his life had prepared him for this moment. The moment when he realized that true wealth wasn't measured in money or power, but in the chance to be a father to a little girl who'd shown him what real generosity looked like. He thought about that dollar in his pocket. He'd kept it, unable to throw it away. It sat on his desk now, a crumpled bill that represented everything wrong with the world and everything right about one remarkable child. She'd had nothing and given it away to a stranger she thought needed it more. What kind of person did that? What kind of heart could remain that pure after months of living on the streets? His daughter. If the test confirmed what he suspected, that incredible little girl was his daughter. And he'd missed 7 years of her life. 7 years of birthdays and lost teeth and first days of school. 7 years of bedtime stories and scraped knees and the 1,000 tiny moments that made up a childhood. He could never get those years back. Could never undo the time lost. But he could be there for her now. He could be there for every day going forward. He could make sure she never spent another night cold or hungry or scared. He could give her opportunities and security and love. So much love that maybe eventually she'd forgive him for not being there before. The rain had started again, washing the city clean. Marcus watched it fall and wondered if redemption was possible, if mistakes could be forgiven, if a family could be built from the fragments of what might have been. In 48 hours, he'd know if Lily was his daughter. But in his heart, he already knew the answer, and that answer changed everything. The DNA results arrived at Marcus's office exactly 47 hours and 32 minutes after the samples were taken. Jennifer brought them personally, her face carefully neutral as she closed the door behind her and activated the privacy shield that blocked all electronic surveillance. Marcus stood by the window, his back to her, hands clenched so tightly his knuckles had gone white. "Just tell me," he said quietly. "Don't make me open it." Jennifer's voice was gentle when she spoke. "Marcus, you have a daughter. Lily is yours. The match is 99.97% certain. There's no doubt." Marcus closed his eyes, and for the first time in 20 years, he felt tears slide down his face. He had a daughter. That beautiful, generous, remarkable little girl was his. All the suspicion, all the hope, all the fear, it had all been leading to this moment of absolute certainty. Lily was his daughter, and he'd missed 7 years of her life. "Does Catherine know we took the sample?" he asked, his voice rough. Dr. Morrison was very discreet. It was part of Lily's general health screening, standard genetic markers for family medical history. Catherine signed the consent forms without question. Jennifer paused. "Marcus, what are you going to do? You can't just walk in and announce you're her father. There are legal considerations, psychological implications for Lily and Catherine. She kept this from you for 7 years. That's going to be a complicated conversation." Marcus turned from the window, wiping his face. His expression had transformed from vulnerable to determined, the CEO returning even as the stunned father remained underneath. "Get me David Chen and the best family therapist in New York. I want to understand every legal right I have, every step we need to take to do this properly. And I want professional guidance on how to tell a 7-year-old girl that the homeless man she gave $1 to is actually her father. When do you want to tell Catherine?" "Today. Now. I can't wait any longer." Marcus moved to his desk, his movements decisive. "She's at Columbia Presbyterian for her follow-up appointment, right? I'll meet her there. This conversation needs to happen face-to-face." Jennifer looked worried. "Marcus, maybe you should wait until the lawyers—" "No," he said firmly. "I've already waited 7 years. Every minute I wait is another minute of living a lie. Catherine deserves to know that I know, and I deserve answers. The lawyers can sort out the details afterward, but this first conversation, this is just between me and the mother of my child." 2 hours later, Marcus sat in a private consultation room at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, waiting. Dr. Morrison had arranged for Catherine to be brought here after her examination, told her that a benefactor from the foundation wanted to meet her personally. Catherine had been reluctant, but had finally agreed, probably afraid that refusing might jeopardize the help she was receiving. When the door opened and Catherine walked in, Marcus felt his breath catch. She looked better than she had in the park. Clean clothes, hair washed, some color back in her face from a few days of regular meals. But she was still too thin, still carried the shadows of suffering in her eyes. She froze when she saw him, the blood draining from her face as recognition hit. "No," she whispered, gripping the doorframe. "No, this isn't happening." "Hello, Catherine," Marcus said gently, standing up but not approaching. "Please sit down. We need to talk." "You're the benefactor?" Her voice was hollow with shock. "The grant program, the apartment, the medical care, that was you? How did you find us? Why did you—" She stopped, her hand moving unconsciously to her chest. "Oh God. You know about Lily." "I know she's my daughter," Marcus said quietly. "I had a DNA test done as part of her medical screening. I'm sorry for doing it that way, but I had to know for certain. Catherine, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you give me the chance to be her father?" Catherine stumbled to a chair and sat down hard, her face in her hands. When she looked up, there were tears streaming down her cheeks. "Because I was terrified. Because your world was so far from mine that I couldn't imagine bringing a child into it. Because I didn't want my daughter raised by nannies and private tutors, taught that money and success were more important than kindness and humanity. Because I thought I could give her a better life on my own. And look how that turned out," Marcus said, then immediately regretted the harshness. "I'm sorry. That wasn't fair. You did give her a better life for 6 years. You raised an incredible child, Catherine. The generosity, the compassion, the pure goodness in that little girl that came from you. But you should have told me. You should have given me the choice." "I know," Catherine sobbed. "God, I know. Every day for the last 8 months I've wondered if I made a terrible mistake. Every night she went to bed hungry. Every time she looked at me with those trusting eyes while I was dying inside, I thought about you. I thought about the life she could have had if I'd just swallowed my pride and told you the truth. But I was so sure I was protecting her, Marcus. I was so sure that your world would destroy everything sweet and innocent about her." Marcus sat down across from her, his own eyes damp. "Did I seem like such a monster that night? Was I so terrible that you couldn't imagine me loving our child?" "No," Catherine said, her voice breaking. "You were wonderful. That's why I ran. because you were so wonderful and so far out of reach that staying would have broken my heart. And when I found out I was pregnant, I convinced myself that any man who lived like you did, surrounded by wealth and power and people who only wanted something from you, couldn't possibly want a child with a woman he'd spent one night with. I thought you'd see Lily as a burden, or worse, try to take her from me completely. I would never have taken her from you, Marcus said fiercely. Yes, my world is complicated. Yes, wealth creates its own problems. But Catherine, I would have found a way. We could have figured it out together. Instead, you decided alone, and now our daughter has trauma that might take years to heal. She's been homeless, Catherine. She's lived on the streets. She's watched you dying and felt helpless. Don't you think she deserved better than that? Of course she did, Catherine shouted, then lowered her voice as a nurse glanced in. Don't you think I know that? Don't you think I've hated myself every single day for the choices that led us there? I was a good mother, Marcus. For 6.5 years, I gave her everything she needed. It's not my fault I got sick. It's not my fault the system failed us. No, Marcus agreed quietly. It's not your fault you got sick. But it is your fault that I wasn't there to help when you did. It's your fault that Lily didn't have a father who could have made sure she never missed a meal, never slept outside, never had to watch her mother suffer without proper medical care. That part? That's on you, Catherine. You made that choice for all of us. They sat in painful silence, the weight of 7 years of decisions and consequences hanging between them. Finally, Catherine spoke, her voice small and defeated. What happens now? Are you going to take her from me? You have the money for lawyers, for custody battles. You have the proof that I kept her from you. Are you going to punish me by taking away the only thing I have left? Marcus looked at her for a long moment, seeing not just the woman who'd hidden his daughter from him, but the woman who'd raised that daughter to be extraordinary despite impossible circumstances. No, he said finally. I'm not going to take her from you. You're her mother and she loves you. What I am going to do is be her father. We're going to tell her the truth, together, with professional help to make sure we don't traumatize her. And then we're going to figure out how to be a family, however unconventional that looks. Catherine's eyes widened in disbelief. You'd still want me involved? After everything I did? You're dying, Catherine, Marcus said bluntly. Dr. Morrison says without a transplant, you have maybe 4 months. I've already put you on the transplant list properly. You're registered as of yesterday with the best cardiac team in the country. But even with that, there are no guarantees. So yes, I want you involved. I want whatever time Lily has left with you to be good time, quality time. I want you to see her grow up safe and happy. And when, his voice caught, when you're gone, I want Lily to remember that her parents loved her enough to put her first, even when it was hard. Catherine broke down completely then, sobbing in a way that shook her whole body. Marcus moved to sit beside her, awkwardly putting an arm around her shoulders as she cried against him. They weren't lovers anymore, hadn't been in 7 years. But in that moment they were united by the most important thing in both their lives, a 7-year-old girl who deserved so much better than what either of them had given her so far. I'm sorry, Catherine gasped out between sobs. I'm so sorry, I thought I was doing the right thing. I really did. I know, Marcus said softly. I know you did. And now we do better. We tell her the truth. We build whatever trust we can, and we give her the life she should have had from the beginning. Can you do that? Can you set aside your fear and your pride and let me be her father? Catherine pulled back, wiping her eyes. What if she hates me? What if she finds out I kept you from her and can never forgive me? Then we deal with that together, Marcus said. With therapy, with time, with patience. But Catherine, we have to tell her. She deserves to know who her father is. And she deserves to know before... He couldn't finish the sentence, but they both knew what he meant. Catherine took a shaky breath and nodded. Okay, we tell her. But Marcus, please, we have to do this right. She's been through so much. We can't just drop this on her like a bomb. Agreed. I have the best child psychologist in the city on standby. Dr. Reeves specializes in helping children through difficult family transitions. She'll guide us on how to tell Lily in a way that's appropriate for her age and circumstances. Marcus paused. There's something else. The apartment, the medical care, the support. That all continues, obviously. But I want to do more. I want to make sure you get the best possible chance at that transplant. And I want to set up a trust for Lily that will ensure she's taken care of no matter what happens to either of us. Catherine's face crumpled again. Why are you being so kind to me? I kept your daughter from you. I robbed you of 7 years. You should hate me. I probably should, Marcus admitted. And maybe part of me does. But a bigger part understands that you were scared and trying to protect our child. You made the wrong choice, but you made it for the right reasons. And more than that, you raised an incredible little girl. The fact that Lily could live on the streets for 8 months and still have enough compassion to give away her last dollar to a stranger, that's because of you, Catherine. You did something right. Catherine managed a watery smile. She is pretty amazing, isn't she? She's extraordinary, Marcus said firmly. And she deserves to know the truth about where she came from. When can we tell her? Dr. Reeves suggested we wait a few days, Catherine said. Let Lily adjust to having a home again. Let her feel secure before we add this complication. Maybe this weekend? We could do it at the apartment, somewhere she feels safe. Marcus nodded, though waiting even a few more days felt impossible. This weekend, then, Saturday afternoon. He stood up, needing to move. I'll have Dr. Reeves there to help guide the conversation. And Catherine, I think after we tell her, we should spend time together, all three of us. Let her get to know me gradually, build trust. I don't want to just be a father on paper. I want to be her dad. She's going to have questions, Catherine warned. She's smart, Marcus. She'll want to know why you weren't there before, why I never told her about you. What do we say? We tell her the truth in age-appropriate terms, Marcus said. That we met briefly, that I didn't know about her, that you were trying to protect her. And we tell her that now that I do know, I'm never going anywhere. I'm going to be there for every scraped knee, every school play, every birthday from now until forever. Catherine stood too, steadier now despite her tears. She might not accept you right away. She's been through trauma. She might not trust easily anymore. Then I'll earn her trust, Marcus said simply. However long it takes. She's my daughter. I have the rest of my life to prove I'm worthy of being her father. Saturday arrived with deceptive sunshine, the kind of crisp November day that made New York feel almost friendly. Marcus had barely slept in the 3 days since his conversation with Catherine, his mind endlessly rehearsing what he would say to Lily, how he would explain 7 years of absence to a child who deserved so much better. Dr. Reeves arrived at the Queen's apartment an hour before Marcus, meeting privately with Catherine to review the plan. She was in her mid-50s, with kind eyes and a calm presence that immediately made Catherine feel less panicked. The most important thing, Dr. O. Reeves explained, sitting at the small kitchen table while Lily played in her bedroom, is that Lily feels safe throughout this conversation, no matter how she reacts, whether she's happy, angry, confused, or all of the above. Both of you need to remain calm and reassuring. Children take emotional cues from the adults around them. What if she asks why I didn't tell her before? Catherine's hands twisted in her lap. What if she thinks I lied to her? You did lie to her, Dr. Reeves said gently but firmly. And at some point you'll need to acknowledge that and apologize. But today isn't about assigning blame. Today is about giving Lily information she needs, answering her questions honestly but age-appropriately, and making sure she knows that both of her parents love her. Can you do that? Catherine nodded, though her stomach was churning. What about Marcus? What if she doesn't want anything to do with him? That's a possibility we have to prepare for, Dr. Reeves acknowledged. Lily might be angry that he wasn't there before, or she might be confused about what this means for her life. She might even be excited at first, but then have complicated feelings later. All of those reactions are normal and valid. The key is to let her feel what she feels without trying to manage her emotions for her. When Marcus arrived, he looked like he'd been awake for days, his usual polished appearance slightly disheveled in a way that made him more human. He carried a small, wrapped package, and when Catherine saw it, she felt her throat tighten. "I didn't know if I should bring a gift," Marcus said quietly. "I don't want her to think I'm trying to buy her affection, but I also didn't want to come empty-handed." "What is it?" Catherine asked. "A book." Marcus looked almost embarrassed. "The Little Prince. It was my favorite when I was young. I thought maybe—" He stopped. "Is that stupid? I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to meet my own daughter for the first time when she's already 7 years old." "None of us know how to do this," Dr. Reeves said kindly. "That's okay. We'll figure it out together. Are you both ready?" Catherine went to get Lily from the bedroom. The little girl had been told only that someone important wanted to meet her, someone who had helped arrange for their apartment and her mother's medical care. She came out holding her mother's hand, wearing a new pink dress that Patricia had brought over, her blonde hair brushed and shining. When she saw Marcus sitting on the couch, her eyes went wide with recognition. "You're the man from the park, the one I gave the $1 to." Then her face fell. "Did I do something wrong? Is that why you're here?" "No, sweetheart," Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. "You didn't do anything wrong. What you did was one of the kindest things anyone has ever done for me." He gestured to the space beside him. "Would you sit with me? There's something very important I need to tell you." Lily looked up at her mother for permission. Catherine nodded, fighting back tears, and Lily cautiously sat on the edge of the couch as far from Marcus as possible while still technically sitting with him. Dr. Reeves smiled encouragingly. "Lily, your mom and I have been talking about some big news. It's good news, but it might also feel confusing or complicated. Do you know what I do for my job?" "Mama said you help people talk about their feelings," Lily said, her voice small. "That's right. And right now, I'm here to help you and your mama and Mr. Hawthorne talk about something important. Is that okay with you?" Lily nodded, her eyes darting between the three adults nervously. Marcus took a deep breath and then did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He got down on his knees in front of Lily so he could look directly into her eyes without looming over her. "Lily, do you know what a father is?" "It's somebody's daddy," Lily said. "Like some kids at the park have daddies who come play with them." "That's right. And did you ever wonder why you didn't have a daddy?" Lily's eyes grew shiny. "Mama said my daddy didn't know about me. She said it wasn't his fault and it wasn't my fault. She said sometimes grown-ups make mistakes." Marcus glanced at Catherine, who was openly crying now. He looked back at Lily and took her small hand gently in his. "Your mama was right. Your daddy didn't know about you for a very long time. But then something amazing happened. Your daddy met a little girl in the park who gave him her last $1 because she thought he needed it more than she did. And that little girl was so special, so kind, so incredible, that he knew he had to find out more about her." Lily's eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. "Are you—" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Are you my daddy?" "Yes," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "I'm your daddy, Lily, and I'm so sorry I wasn't there before. I didn't know about you, but now that I do, I promise I'm never going anywhere. If you'll let me, I want to be your dad forever." Lily stared at him for a long moment, her 7-year-old mind trying to process information that was world-shaking. Then she turned to look at her mother. "Mama, is it true?" "It's true, baby," Catherine said through her tears. "Marcus is your father. I should have told you sooner, should have told him sooner, but I was scared and I made mistakes. I'm so sorry." Lily looked back at Marcus, her expression impossible to read. "Why do you look like a regular person now? In the park you looked homeless." "I was pretending," Marcus admitted. "I was doing an experiment to see if people would help someone who looked like they needed it. Most people walked right past me. But you stopped. You gave me your $1 even though you needed it more. That's how I knew you were special, even before I knew you were my daughter. So you're not really poor?" Lily's voice was getting smaller. "You have money?" "I have a lot of money," Marcus said carefully. "Does that bother you?" Lily was quiet for a long moment, then asked in a voice that broke everyone's hearts. "If you have a lot of money, why didn't you come find me before? Why didn't you make sure me and Mama had a house? Why did we have to sleep outside?" This was the question Marcus had been dreading. He looked helplessly at Dr. Reeves, who nodded encouragingly. "Because I didn't know about you, sweetheart. Your mama and I only met one time, a long time ago, before you were born. And then your mama had to leave and I didn't see her again. She didn't tell me she was going to have a baby, that's you. So I didn't know to come looking for you. I didn't know you existed until I met you in the park. Why didn't Mama tell you? Lily looked at Catherine with confusion that bordered on hurt. You always say lying is bad. Did you lie to him? Catherine knelt down beside Marcus, facing her daughter. I made a choice, baby. A choice I thought was right, but turned out to be wrong. I was scared that Marcus's life was too different from ours, that it might not be safe for you. So I decided to raise you by myself. And for a long time we were okay, weren't we? We were happy. Until you got sick, Lily said, tears starting to fall. And then everything got bad. And if you had told my daddy before, maybe we wouldn't have had to live outside. Maybe you could have gotten medicine sooner. Maybe everything would have been better. The raw hurt in her voice made Catherine sob. You're right. Maybe it would have been better. I'm so sorry, Lily. I'm so sorry. Marcus gently touched Lily's chin, bringing her attention back to him. What happened before wasn't your fault, and it wasn't really anybody's fault. Your mama was trying to protect you the best way she knew how. But now we know better, and we're going to do better. From now on, you're going to have both of us. You're going to have a home that's safe, food whenever you're hungry, and parents who love you more than anything in the world. Lily looked between them, processing. Are you going to marry Mama? Is that what happens when someone has a baby together? Not always, Dr. Reeves interjected gently. Sometimes parents decide to be partners in taking care of their child even if they're not married or living together. That's what your mom and dad are going to do. They're going to work together to make sure you're happy and safe. Do I have to call you Daddy? Lily asked Marcus, her voice uncertain. You can call me whatever feels right to you, Marcus said, his heart aching at the careful distance in her voice. Marcus is fine, or Dad, or Daddy, or even Mr. Hawthorne if that's what you want. I'm not going to force anything. I just want to get to know you, Lily. I want to be part of your life. Lily was quiet for a long time, her small face serious as she thought. Finally, she said, Can I ask you questions? About where you live and what you do and stuff? You can ask me anything you want, anytime, Marcus promised. I'll always tell you the truth. Do you have a big house? I have a penthouse apartment in Manhattan. It's pretty big. Bigger than this apartment? Marcus smiled sadly. Yes, sweetheart. A lot bigger. If you're my daddy, does that mean we have to move there? I like this apartment. It has a pink blanket on my bed. You don't have to move anywhere you don't want to, Marcus assured her. This apartment is yours for as long as you want it. Though maybe someday you'd like to come visit my place? See where I live? I have an extra bedroom that we could decorate however you like, for times when you want to stay over. Lily considered this. What if I don't want to stay over? What if I just want to stay with Mama? Then that's okay too, Marcus said, though his heart broke a little at the words. We'll go at whatever pace feels right to you. No pressure, no rush. I've waited 7 years to meet you, Lily. I can wait a little longer for you to decide if you want me in your life. Dr. Reeves spoke up. Lily, it's okay if you have mixed feelings about this. It's okay if part of you is excited and part of you is confused or even angry. All of those feelings are normal, and you know what? You don't have to figure out how you feel right now. You can take your time. Lily looked at Marcus for a long moment, studying his face with an intensity that reminded him eerily of himself. Then she said something that completely undid him. You have my eyes. Or I have your eyes. They're the same. Yes, Marcus said, his voice barely steady. We have the same eyes. Mama has blue eyes too, but they're different. Yours are exactly like mine. Lily reached out tentatively and touched his face, tracing his cheekbone with one small finger. We have the same chin too. The same little dip in the middle. Marcus stayed perfectly still, afraid that moving would break the spell, would make her pull away. This was the first time his daughter had touched him voluntarily, and the simple contact felt more significant than any business deal he'd ever closed. Would it be okay, Marcus asked softly, if I hugged you? Just once? I promise I'll let go whenever you want. Lily thought about it, then nodded. Marcus carefully put his arms around her, and she leaned into his chest with a sigh that sounded exhausted. He wondered how long she'd been carrying the weight of feeling like she was the only person looking out for her mother. How tiring it must have been to be 7 years old and feel responsible for another person's survival. I missed you, Marcus whispered into her hair, even before I knew you existed. Does that make sense? No, Lily said honestly, but she didn't pull away. But it's kind of nice anyway. They stayed like that for a moment that Marcus wanted to last forever. When Lily finally pulled back, there was something less guarded in her expression, though still cautious. Can I see the present? She asked, eyeing the wrapped package. Marcus handed it to her with a smile. It's nothing fancy, just something I thought you might like. Lily tore off the paper to reveal the leather-bound copy of The Little Prince. The pages gilt-edged, the illustrations beautiful. It's a book. It's my favorite book, Marcus said. I read it when I was about your age, and I've read it probably 100 times since. I thought maybe we could read it together sometime if you want to. Lily opened the book carefully, looking at the pictures. What's it about? It's about a little prince from another planet who travels to Earth and learns about love and friendship and what really matters in life. It's about seeing with your heart instead of just your eyes. Lily studied the book thoughtfully. Will you read it to me now? The beginning part? Marcus looked at Catherine, who nodded through her tears. Dr. Reeves smiled. I think that's a perfect idea. I'll give you all some privacy. As Dr. Reeves let herself out, Marcus moved to sit properly on the couch. Lily hesitated, then climbed up beside him. Not quite touching, but closer than before. Catherine sat on his other side, and Marcus opened the book to the first page. Once, when I was 6 years old, he began reading. I saw a magnificent picture in a book about the primeval forest called True Stories. 3 months had passed since that Saturday afternoon, and the transformation in all their lives had been nothing short of miraculous. Marcus sat in his penthouse office, but instead of financial reports spread across his desk, there were crayon drawings, dozens of them, each one signed Lily in careful 7-year-old handwriting. His favorite showed 3 stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun, one labeled Daddy, one Mama, and one Me. The transition hadn't been seamless. There had been difficult moments. Nights when Lily woke up screaming from nightmares about living on the streets, therapy sessions where she expressed anger at both her parents for the time they'd lost, moments when she pushed Marcus away because trusting felt too dangerous. But there had been beautiful moments too. The first time she'd called him Dad instead of Marcus, the morning she'd asked if she could keep a toothbrush at his penthouse, the evening she'd fallen asleep against his shoulder while he read to her, trusting him enough to be that vulnerable. Catherine's health had stabilized with proper care. She'd been officially registered on the National Transplant List for 2.5 months now, properly documented with the best cardiac team in the country monitoring her condition. Dr. Morrison had been honest about the wait. It could be weeks, it could be months, it could be longer. The uncertainty was agonizing, but Catherine was in far better condition than she'd been before Marcus found them. The apartment in Queens had become a real home, filled with Lily's artwork and the sound of laughter, something that had been missing for too long. Marcus had been careful not to overwhelm Lily with his wealth. Yes, she now had nice clothes and proper school supplies and a trust fund that would ensure her security for life. But he'd listened to Catherine's concerns about not wanting Lily to lose her values, her compassion, her understanding of what truly mattered. So instead of buying her a pony or filling her room with expensive toys, he focused on experiences. Afternoons at museums, walks in the park, cooking dinner together in his massive kitchen, while she stood on a stool and measured ingredients with intense concentration. Hawthorne Industries had also changed. Marcus had established a foundation dedicated to helping families who fell through the cracks of the system, healthcare workers who got sick, single parents facing eviction, children at risk of homelessness. He'd committed $200 million to the cause, and Jennifer had never seen him more passionate about anything in his business career. You're different, she'd told him one day. Not better or worse, just different. More human somehow. I learned from the best teacher, he'd replied, thinking of a 7-year-old girl who'd taught him that generosity wasn't about giving from abundance, but about giving from need. Now, on a sunny February afternoon, Marcus stood in the kitchen of Catherine's apartment helping Lily make cookies for her mother's birthday. Catherine sat at the table watching them, her color better than it had been in over a year, though she still tired easily. "No, Dad, you have to fold the chocolate chips in gently," Lily instructed seriously, taking the spoon from him. "If you stir too hard, the dough gets tough. Mama taught me that." "Your mama is clearly a better baker than I am," Marcus said with mock solemnity. "I bow to your superior expertise." Lily giggled, the sound still precious to him even after hearing it hundreds of times. She'd grown in the past 3 months, not just physically, though Dr. Morrison said she'd gained 8 pounds of healthy weight, but emotionally. The haunted look had faded from her eyes. She smiled more easily. She'd even made friends at her new school, girls who came over for play dates and didn't care that she'd once been homeless. "Can we put a surprise in one of the cookies?" Lily whispered conspiratorially. "Like a special ingredient Mama doesn't know about?" "What kind of special ingredient?" Marcus asked, intrigued. "Extra love," Lily said seriously. "We think it really hard while we mix it in, and then when she eats it, she'll taste how much we love her." Marcus felt his throat tighten. This child had been through hell and somehow emerged believing that love could be an ingredient in cookies. "I think that's a perfect idea. Let's put extra love in all of them." They mixed the dough with exaggerated concentration. Lily's tongue stuck out slightly as she stirred. When the cookies went in the oven, she turned to Marcus with a question he'd been expecting, but dreading. "Dad, is Mama going to die?" Catherine, who'd been dozing in her chair, went very still. Marcus knelt down to be at Lily's eye level, taking her flour-covered hands in his. "Your mama is very sick, sweetheart. You know that. The doctors are doing everything they can to find her a new heart, and we hope they will. But sometimes, even when we hope really hard and do everything right, people we love still die." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Are you worried about what would happen to you if Mama died?" Lily nodded, tears welling up. "Where would I go? Would I have to go back to living outside?" "No," Marcus said fiercely, pulling her into his arms. "Never. Never again, Lily, I promise you. If anything happens to your mama, and we're going to fight like crazy to make sure nothing does, you would live with me. You're my daughter. You'll always have a home with me, always have someone to take care of you. You're never going to be alone again." "But what if you die too?" Lily asked, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "What if everyone dies and leaves me?" "Then you would go to your Aunt Jennifer," Marcus said, referencing his assistant who had become deeply attached to Lily. "And if something happened to her, there's Uncle David from my legal team, and Dr. Reeves, and about 15 other people who would fight over who gets to take care of you. We've all fallen in love with you, Lily. You have so many people in your corner now that you'd have to work really hard to end up alone." Catherine spoke from her chair, her voice thick with tears. "Come here, baby girl." Lily went to her mother, climbing into her lap despite being almost too big for it. Catherine held her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I'm fighting to stay with you as long as I can. Every single day I'm fighting. But your dad is right. Even if the very worst thing happens, you'll be okay. You'll be more than okay. You'll be loved and safe and cared for. That's what matters most to me. I don't want you to die," Lily sobbed. "I want you to stay forever. I know, baby, I know, and I'm going to try my very hardest." Catherine looked at Marcus over Lily's head, her expression grateful and heartbroken and somehow peaceful all at once. "But if I can't stay, I need you to promise me something. Can you do that?" Lily nodded against her mother's chest. "I need you to promise that you'll let your dad take care of you, that you'll let yourself be happy, even if you're sad about me, that you'll grow up to be the amazing person I know you can be. Can you promise me that?" "I promise," Lily whispered. The oven timer went off, breaking the heavy moment. Marcus wiped his eyes and went to retrieve the cookies, giving Catherine and Lily a moment alone. When he turned back with the hot tray, both of them were wiping their faces and trying to smile. "Birthday cookies," he announced with forced cheer, complete with extra special secret ingredient. Lily climbed down from her mother's lap and peered at the cookies. They look perfect. When they cool, can we frost them? We can do whatever you want, Marcus said. It's your mama's birthday. You're in charge. That evening, after the cookies had been frosted and eaten, after Catherine had opened the modest presents they'd gotten her, after Lily had fallen asleep in her bed surrounded by stuffed animals that Marcus had definitely not bought, despite Catherine's gentle teasing, Marcus and Catherine sat on the apartment's small balcony watching the city lights. Thank you, Catherine said quietly, for everything. For being the father I was too scared to let you be 7 years ago. For not hating me. For being so good to her. You don't need to thank me, Marcus said. She's my daughter. Being good to her isn't a favor to you, it's just what parents do. Still, Catherine was quiet for a moment. The waiting is the hardest part. Every day I wonder if today will be the day Dr. Morrison calls. 2.5 months on the list feels like forever when you don't know how much time you have left. Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand. You're stable. You're doing better than you were. That buys us time. I know. And I'm grateful for every day. Catherine turned to look at him. If I get the transplant and survive, we're going to have to figure out what custody looks like long term. And I'm scared, Marcus. I'm scared you'll want her full time. And I'm scared that legally you'd have every right to push for that. Do you want to know what I want? Marcus asked. I want Lily to have both of her parents healthy and present and co-parenting like functional adults even though we're not together. I want her to split time between your apartment and my penthouse, to have 2 homes where she feels safe and loved. I want her to maintain the values you've taught her while also having the opportunities my resources can provide. I don't want to take her from you, Catherine. I want to share her with you. Catherine let out a shaky breath. Really? You'd be okay with 50-50 custody? Even though you could afford lawyers who could argue that I endangered her by keeping her existence from you. I could, Marcus acknowledged. But I won't. Yes, you made mistakes. So did I. I should have tried harder to find you 7 years ago. Should have questioned why you disappeared so completely. But we both did our best with what we knew at the time. And now we know better, so we do better. That's what we tell Lily, and it's what we need to live ourselves. I don't deserve you being this reasonable, Catherine said, tears sliding down her cheeks. You deserve a chance to watch your daughter grow up, Marcus said firmly. So we're going to hope like hell that a match comes through soon, that the transplant is successful, that you have decades left to be Lily's mom. Because that little girl in there needs you, Catherine. She needs both of us. They sat in companionable silence. 2 people who'd created a child from one magical night and were now trying to build something sustainable from the wreckage of their mistakes. Inside, Lily dreamed of cookies and sunshine and a future that finally felt secure. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning in early March, Catherine's phone rang while she was making Lily breakfast. She saw Dr. Morrison's number, and her heart stopped. Catherine, we have a match. Dr. Morrison's voice was calm, but urgent. A compatible donor became available. The organ is in excellent condition. We need you at the hospital within the hour. Can you get here? Catherine's hands shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. Yes, I'll be there. Oh my God. Call Marcus. Get Lily settled. And Catherine, this is good news. The best news. We're going to do this. After she hung up, Catherine stood frozen in the kitchen, unable to process that the moment she'd been waiting for had finally arrived. Lily looked up from her cereal, immediately sensing something was wrong. Mama? What happened? They found me a heart, baby, Catherine said, tears streaming down her face. They found me a new heart. I have to go to the hospital right now for the surgery. Lily's face went white. Right now? But what if something goes wrong? What if you don't come back? Catherine knelt down and pulled her daughter close. I'm going to do everything I can to come back to you. Dr. Morrison is the best doctor in the world. But Lily, you need to call your dad right now. He needs to know, and he needs to take care of you while I'm in surgery. Can you be brave for me? Lily nodded, though her chin trembled. She picked up Catherine's phone with shaking hands and dialed Marcus's number from memory. Catherine? Marcus answered on the first ring. It's Lily, she said in a small voice. Mama got a call. They found her a heart. She has to go to the hospital right now and I'm scared. I'm on my way, Marcus said immediately. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Lily, your mama is going to be fine. Dr. Morrison knows what she's doing. Can you help your mama pack a bag? Okay, Lily whispered. Marcus arrived in 12 minutes, having broken every speed limit between Manhattan and Queens. He found Lily helping Catherine gather her things, both of them crying. He wrapped them both in his arms. You've got this, he told Catherine. You're a fighter. You've survived things that would have broken most people. This surgery is just one more battle and you're going to win. Take care of her, Catherine said, gripping his arm. If something happens to me, nothing is going to happen, Marcus said firmly. But yes, she's my daughter. I've got her. Always. The ride to the hospital was surreal. Marcus drove while Catherine sat in the back with Lily, holding her daughter's hand and trying to memorize every detail of her face. When they arrived, Dr. Morrison was waiting. We need to prep you immediately, she said to Catherine. The organ is viable for a limited window. Are you ready? Catherine looked at Lily one more time. I love you, baby girl, more than anything in this world. Remember that no matter what. I love you too, Mama. Lily sobbed. Please come back. Please. Then Catherine was being wheeled away, and Marcus was left holding his crying daughter in a hospital waiting room that suddenly felt like the loneliest place on earth. The surgery took 9 hours. Marcus sat with Lily the entire time, reading to her when she could focus, holding her when she couldn't, answering the same questions over and over because she needed the reassurance. Jennifer arrived with food they couldn't eat. Dr. Reeves stopped by to check on them. Other families came and went, their own dramas playing out. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime compressed into a single day, Dr. Morrison emerged. Her scrubs were bloodied, her face exhausted, but she was smiling. The transplant was successful, she said. Catherine's new heart is beating strong. She's in recovery now. It's going to be a long road. Months of rehabilitation, anti-rejection medications for the rest of her life, careful monitoring. But she made it. She's going to live. Marcus felt his knees buckle with relief. He dropped to a crouch and pulled Lily into his arms as she burst into fresh tears. These ones of joy and relief and the release of hours of terror. Mama's okay? Lily asked, her voice muffled against his shirt. She's really okay? She's really okay, sweetheart, Marcus said, his own voice breaking. Your mama kept her promise. She fought, and she won. They were allowed to see Catherine an hour later. She was pale and weak, connected to machines, but her eyes opened when they entered and focused immediately on Lily with an intensity that needed no words. Hi, baby girl, Catherine whispered. I told you I was a fighter. You promised you'd try your hardest, Lily said carefully, approaching the bed like Catherine might break. You kept your promise. Always, Catherine managed. I'm going to keep every promise from now on, starting with this one. I'm going to watch you grow up. I'm going to see you graduate high school, go to college, do amazing things. I'm going to be there, Lily, I promise. Marcus stood back, giving them their moment, feeling something settle in his chest that had been unsettled for months. This was his family now, imperfect, complicated, built from mistakes and second chances, but his. A daughter who'd taught him about generosity, an ex-lover who'd taught him about forgiveness, and a future that suddenly felt full of possibilities instead of regrets. 3 months after the transplant, on a perfect May afternoon, the three of them went back to Washington Square Park. It was Lily's idea. She wanted to see the place where everything had changed, where she'd given her last dollar to a stranger and unknowingly found her father. They walked through the arch, hand in hand, Lily in the middle, Marcus on one side, Catherine on the other. Catherine was still regaining her strength, but the color was back in her face, the light back in her eyes. The park was full of people living their lives, unaware that this spot held such significance for the three of them. There, Lily said, pointing to the wall where Marcus had sat disguised as homeless. That's where you were. And I came from over there. She demonstrated, walking the path she'd taken that rainy November night. And I was so worried because you looked so sad. I was sad, Marcus admitted. I'd spent days watching people walk past without seeing me, and it made me sad about the world. But then you stopped and everything changed. Because I gave you the dollar? Because you saw me, Marcus corrected. The dollar was generous, but what really mattered was that you looked at me like I was a person who deserved kindness. Do you know how rare that is? Lily considered this seriously. Mama always says that everyone deserves kindness. That's why we should give it even when it's hard. Catherine smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand. Her recovery had been remarkable. Dr. Morrison called her a model patient. That's right, baby. And look where your kindness led. You found your dad, we found a home, and now we're all together and healthy. That's the thing about kindness. You never know how far it will spread. Like ripples in a pond, Lily said, showing off something she'd learned in school. One splash makes ripples that go out and out and out. Exactly like that, Marcus agreed. He knelt down to Lily's level, serious now. I want to tell you something important. That dollar you gave me, I kept it. I have it framed in my office, and every time I look at it, I remember what you taught me. You taught me that real wealth isn't about money in the bank. It's about having people to love and being willing to help others even when you don't have much yourself. You taught me that at 7 years old. Do you understand how special that makes you? Lily blushed, looking down at her shoes. I was just being nice. That's not special. It is special, Catherine said softly. It's the most special thing in the world. And you know what else is special? The fact that we're standing here together, healthy and safe and happy. A year ago, I wasn't sure we'd survive another winter. Now look at us. They stood together in the spot where their lives had intersected, watching people pass by. Some seeing them, some not. Everyone caught up in their own stories. Somewhere in the crowd, another child might be hungry. Another parent might be desperate. Another person might be invisible to everyone rushing past. Can we come back here sometimes? Lily asked. And maybe look for people who need help? We have extra now, we should share it. Marcus looked at Catherine, and they shared a smile that held 7 years of mistakes, 6 months of healing, and a future full of possibility. We can do that, he said. In fact, I think that's a perfect idea. We'll call it the Last Dollar Project. Every month we'll come here and we'll help someone who needs it. Would you like that? Lily's face lit up with the same brightness Marcus had seen that rainy November night. Really? We can really do that? Really, Marcus promised. After all, if a 7-year-old girl can change the world with $1, imagine what we can do together. As they walked away from the park, Lily between her parents, she started humming. It was a simple tune, something she'd been singing the day she'd earned that dollar, and it carried on the spring breeze like a promise. The CEO who'd disguised himself as homeless, the nurse who'd been given a second chance at life, and the daughter who'd saved them both. They walked together into a future none of them could have imagined, but all of them had helped create. Sometimes the greatest fortunes aren't measured in money, but in the connections that transform us. Sometimes the most valuable investments aren't in stocks or real estate, but in the courage to open our hearts to unexpected possibilities. And sometimes the most important thing a person can do is see another human being and choose kindness, even, especially, when it costs them everything they have. Lily had given her last dollar to a stranger in the rain. In return, she'd gotten a father, her mother had gotten a second chance at life, and Marcus had gotten something no amount of money could buy. A family built on love, forgiveness, and the kind of generosity that changes everything. As the sun set over New York City, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, 3 people walked home together. They weren't perfect. Their story hadn't been easy. But they were together, and they were alive. And that was enough. That was everything. And in Marcus's office, carefully preserved behind glass in an elegant frame, a single crumpled dollar bill served as a reminder that the smallest acts of kindness can ripple outward in ways we never imagine, touching lives, changing hearts, and proving that sometimes the greatest wealth is found in giving everything away.